Welcome to the Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy, and this is where characters gather. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting our classic romance author series. And I am so excited about this entire series. I can't even begin to tell you. So, first, we're going to do them in chronological order. From firstborn to most recent. And our first author is Barbara Cartland. She was born in 1901. She died at the age of 98 in 2000. She was a character of herself. She was a fixture of British society and an incredibly fascinating woman. So, let's do some quick facts first. Besides all of her published works, the fact a lot of you may know is she was Princess Diana's step-grandmother. And she did not go to their wedding because it was feared that her attendance at the wedding would upstage the bride. And so she didn't go. When Charles and Diana got a divorce, she was an outspoken opponent of the divorce. And Diana and her step-grandmother did reconcile shortly before the princess died, and so at least they had that level of peace achieved. So she is one of the, if not the, best-selling authors of the 20th century. She primarily wrote contemporary and historical romances. She also wrote nonfiction, and she wrote biographies. She wrote plays and operettas. She had several musical pieces, not just written, but performed, that she authored. So she was very, very talented. She is the 5th most translated author in the world. Let that sink in. The 5th most translated author in the world. That is just an outstanding fact. She has sold, there are 2 estimates here. The low end estimate is that she has sold more than 750 million books. And the other estimate is that she has sold in excess of 2 billion books. Those numbers are fantastical. Let's talk a little about her personal life. She had many proposals. Here's a picture of her. I believe it's in 1925. As you can tell, she was a looker. And she gets engaged, and then her mother explains to her marital relations. And she immediately breaks the engagement and refuses for a long time to get married to anyone, despite all the numerous proposals. Eventually, she does fall in love and get married. She has 2 marriages in her lifetime. Her first marriage was to Captain Alexander McCork Odell, and it was from 1927 to 1933. They have 1 daughter out of the marriage. Her name is Rain. And eventually they divorce. And she remarries in 1936 to Hugh McCork Odell, who is her first husband's cousin. And they stay married until 1963 when Hugh dies. And they have 2 sons, Ian and Glenn. And Cartland is a Dame of the British Empire, which is equivalent to Sir. She later claims that her daughter was actually the daughter of Prince George, who was the 4th son of King George and Queen Mary, who were Queen Elizabeth II's godparent or grandparents, and he was also the Duke of Kent. This has never been proven, so it's what she claimed. Her best friend in life was Lord Mountbatten, and they were always close. He was a great supporter of hers. You know, they moved in the same circles, so it makes perfect sense. Okay, so let's talk about her books. I grew up reading Barbara Cartland. My mom always, she doesn't read a lot anymore, but when she did read a lot, she read romances. And Barbara Cartland was one of those romance authors that she usually had, you know, one book stashed away somewhere that she was in process reading. And so naturally, I picked them up and read them too growing up. And I loved them. I absolutely loved them. So her first novel is published in 1923, and it is entitled Jigsaw. And it was, I have not, to the best of my knowledge, read it, by the way. It's labeled as a risque society thriller, which immediately becomes a bestseller. Just right off the bat. And risque is a very good description of her writing style. Like, it never crosses the line in what today we would call open door. It doesn't even remotely come close to that. However, are her characters very upfront about the fact that they are physically attracted to the object of their affection or perceived affection? They are, and they're not shy in saying, I think you're so beautiful, I want to kiss you, or I'm in love with you, let's move things along, or even if they're just talking to themselves, they're very blunt. And in some may call that language today lustful. It isn't. It never even remotely comes close to that, in my opinion. But then again, it's all subjective, and so I just think risque is a very apt description of what she writes. So in 1926, she publishes a play entitled Bloody Mary, and it was immediately banned by the Lord Chamberlain's office because of its risque nature and its content, and it just, it teaches her a lesson. So and she's publishing throughout all of this many times a year. In total, she publishes in her lifetime in excess of 500 books. And upon her death, her heirs discover 160 unpublished novels awaiting publication. In total, she wrote 723 published works. 723. She still, to this day, holds the Guinness record for the most published works. So in 1950s, there is a plagiarism claim leveled at her by one of the other authors in this series, and I will talk about it more when I get to that author. And a lot of research was done, a lot of allegations are made, but no charges are ever leveled. There is no lawsuit that ever, finds her guilty of plagiarism, and the allegation never arose further than an allegation. So, in the 1950s, she publishes A Guide to Married Life in Ireland, and it is immediately banned. Just immediately banned. Because of the character of its content. Which is, an open and honest discussion of married life. Kind of like, she had with her mom when she first got engaged and learned what marital relations were. So, of those 160 novels that are published after her death, they have a separate title. They're known as the Pink Collection. Those are all of the works published after her death. And what her sons do is they publish one book a month until the entire back catalog has been published. And the last Barbara Cartland book was published in 2018. 18 years after after her death. She was prolific. And this was before computers, before AI. Almost everything she wrote was done on a typewriter. And was, from her head to the page. And it's startling the amount of work she did. Now, I also know that the Eternal Collection, some of which is available on Kindle Unlimited, is a re-release of her catalog, and it began in November of 2013. And in general, they're in 10 book chunks in the Eternal catalog. So Eternal 1 is books 1 through 10. And they are, I know the first several at least of the Eternal Collection are available on Kindle Unlimited. And for this video, I did pick up Eternal 1 and read the first book in it. So the first book in the Eternal Collection, Volume 1, is Elizabethan Lover. And these aren't, her books average less than 300 pages. I think at most 350, as I recall. So she did not write, multi-hundred page books in any of her collections. So they're quick, easy afternoon reads. And in the first one, it's a pirate story. And a lot of it is told from the male perspective. And it is told at the time, it's set when Queen Elizabeth is on the throne. It's 1588. And Rodney has just returned from sailing with Sir Francis Drake. And he wants to now captain his own ship. So he gets investors. His uncle, Sir Francis Walsingham, Queen Elizabeth's spymaster, puts up a portion of ownership for the ship. Rodney contributes, and he needs another, a third investor. And his uncle's like, well, go see my buddy up there and offer something in return. Offer to marry his first daughter. He's like, cool. So he goes, immediately sees her falls in love with her. Her dad agrees to A, to the marriage, and B, to put up money. And she is like, I don't want anything to do with you. And along the way into the house on the road, he gets his hat shot off by what he thinks is a urchin that lives on the property. It turns out to be his future fiance's younger sister. And things perspire, or, because things happen. He gets his money, he gets his ship, and suddenly he is saddled with his fiance's youngest brother, only brother, as a passenger on the ship as punishment for his not listening to his dad. He's not happy about this, but agrees. So, turns out it's the little sister. Her name is Lisbeth, and she's clearly in love with Rodney, and he, unbeknownst to him, clearly has feelings for her, but he still thinks he's in love with the older sister. And Lisbeth knows why the older sister doesn't want to marry Rodney, but she doesn't tell him, nor does she tell him that she is posing as her little brother, who has escaped back to Oxford to do whatever he's going to do. And what ensues is a non-bodice ripper pirate romance. Rodney is clearly a privateer for Queen Elizabeth I. He is going after Spanish galleons, and he quickly figures out that Lisbeth is Lisbeth, not her brother Francis, but he hides it from the rest of the ship. It's just fantastic. I loved it. Is it a complex, overly emotional, heartstring tugger? No. Is it an easy afternoon read that is full of adventure and set in a time period that isn't often chosen, and certainly not often chosen for a non-bodice ripper? Yes. Is it a little bit risque? Yes. Will it cross the line for some people? Yes. Will it be anywhere close to risque enough for others? Absolutely. I didn't care. I loved it. It was fun. It was enjoyable. It was a quick, easy Sunday afternoon read that didn't tax the brain and didn't ask me to put an excess amount of thought into the process, which is what I wanted. And I will continue to read more. I highly, if you're even remotely interested, you can find them in used bookstores, but they can be expensive, especially if you're buying them from the original publication or one of the mid 20th century republications. Those covers can be very expensive, especially for a book that's, 250, 270 pages, and a used copy in not great condition is in excess of $20. Yeah. These, as they come up on Kindle sale, I will pick them up. I would love to own them, but unless I can get a great deal from them on, Better World, I'm not paying $20, in excess of $20 for a 250-page novel that I am not going to reread. That's financial nonsense for me. However, a small portion of her 723 works are available on Kindle Unlimited. And when you need a palate cleanser that isn't taxing, and you want just to lose yourself for an afternoon, the reading equivalent of Calgon Take Me Away, I highly recommend a Barbara Cartland book. What do you have to lose? So, that is the first installment of the classic romance authors series. And she's just this amazing woman in her own right. I didn't cover her activities in World War II, or the fact that Winston Churchill wrote an introduction to one of her biographies, or that she helped invent the glider, or not help invent the glider, but she made a very significant contribution to the glider in the war, and she was recognized for it post-war. She has this larger-than-life personality 25 years after her death. And that is completely separate from her relationship to the royal family. So, yeah. If you want to dip your toes into a classic romance author that doesn't necessarily write Regencies or romantic suspense or huge epics, give Barbara Cartland a try. Leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.